The global economy has a kill switch, a single point of failure that, if triggered, can send shockwaves through every market, every industry, and every household on the planet. For decades, experts have warned about this vulnerability, but few imagined it would ever be flipped. And in 2026, that nightmare scenario has become reality. The world is watching in disbelief as the unthinkable unfolds live on every screen. For weeks now, the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that serves as the world's most critical oil route, has been completely shut down. This slender passage, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, usually sees over a fifth of the world's oil flow through its waters every single day. Now, it's eerily silent. This isn't just another regional flare-up or a temporary disruption, it's the biggest energy shock since the oil crises of the 1970s. Back then, the world learned how fragile energy security could be. Today, the stakes are even higher, with economies far more interconnected and dependent on steady energy supplies. Oil prices have skyrocketed, smashing through $116 a barrel and climbing higher by the day. Supply chains are unraveling at breakneck speed. Shipping containers are stuck at ports, factories are halting production, and store shelves are emptying as panic buying sets in. Iran's military blockade, launched in retaliation after US-Israel airstrikes, has effectively cut off nearly 20% of the world's oil supply overnight. The strategic chess game in the Gulf has turned deadly serious, with warships patrolling the waters and the threat of escalation looming large. Oil tankers are stranded at sea, unable to move. Energy markets are in chaos, with traders scrambling to make sense of the new reality. In cities around the world, millions are facing fuel shortages, rolling blackouts, and a growing sense of uncertainty about what tomorrow will bring. But the pain isn't spread evenly. Some countries, thanks to geography or policy, are weathering the storm better than others. For many, the crisis is a test of resilience. For others, it's a tipping point that could lead to economic collapse or even social unrest. Today we're counting down the top 10 countries most affected by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. These nations are facing unprecedented challenges, from skyrocketing prices to political instability. From those under immense pressure to those teetering on the brink of disaster, we'll reveal who's most at risk and why. The world has changed overnight. Let's begin. For Iraq, Kuwait, and Qatar, the Strait of Hormuz is more than just a waterway, it's their economic lifeline, the critical artery through which nearly all their oil and gas must flow to reach the world. Now, with the strait effectively severed, these nations find themselves abruptly cut off from global markets, their most vital export routes blocked overnight. With nowhere for their oil and gas to go, exports grind to a halt. Storage facilities quickly fill to capacity, forcing production cuts and leaving tankers stranded. State revenues, which depend almost entirely on these exports, are slashed in a matter of days, sending shockwaves through national economies. Iraq's fragile government, already struggling with instability, is hit especially hard. Oil accounts for over 90% of its income. As revenues vanish, the government can't pay salaries, sparking widespread protests and deepening political turmoil. The risk of unrest grows by the hour. In Kuwait, the generous welfare system that supports citizens is suddenly under threat. The country's sovereign wealth fund, once a symbol of stability, is rapidly drained to cover basic expenses. As the crisis deepens, expat workers, who form the backbone of the economy, begin to leave, accelerating the economic downturn. Qatar, the world's leading exporter of liquefied natural gas, faces its own crisis. With shipping lanes blocked, it can no longer reach key Asian markets. Major LNG projects are put on hold, threatening both current revenues and future growth. With no viable alternatives for export, these nations are the first to feel the full, devastating force of the shutdown. Their economies, so dependent on energy exports, are left in limbo, uncertain and exposed. The risk of cascading instability is very real. As the world watches, the fate of these Gulf nations and the global energy market hangs in the balance, with consequences that could ripple far beyond the region. The United Arab Emirates, long celebrated as a regional powerhouse and a beacon of modernity in the Middle East, now faces an unprecedented crisis. With the sudden closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the nation's main trade gateway has been abruptly shut, sending shockwaves through the economy and daily life. Dubai's world-renowned port and logistics hub, once a symbol of seamless global trade, are now snarled with delays. Imports are becoming costlier by the day, and the smooth flow of goods has ground to a halt. Supply chains are breaking down, leaving businesses scrambling to find alternatives and consumers facing uncertainty. Food imports, which make up a staggering 80% of the country's needs, are now threatened. Supermarket shelves are running low, and the hospitality sector is suffering as tourism numbers plummet, leaving hotels and restaurants eerily quiet. Alternative routes through Saudi Arabia and Oman exist, but they are limited, risky, and unable to fully compensate for the loss of maritime access. Oil exports, the lifeblood of the UAE's economy, are bottlenecked, causing government revenues to fall sharply. Major construction projects, once the pride of the nation, are now at risk of stalling indefinitely, threatening jobs and future growth. The UAE's carefully crafted identity as a global crossroads for commerce, tourism, and innovation is under serious threat, as the world turns its gaze elsewhere. Across the country, a sense of vulnerability and uncertainty is unmistakable. The future, once bright and assured, now feels precarious as the nation grapples with a closed gateway and an uncertain path forward. Saudi Arabia's East-West pipeline was built for this crisis, but it's not enough. Oil exports are capped, revenues are plunging, and Vision 2030 reforms are on hold. Social spending is under pressure, youth unemployment is rising, and new projects are stalled. International influence is fading as oil leverage weakens. The kingdom's stability, at home and abroad, is suddenly in question. The crisis has exposed the limits of Saudi resilience. The path forward is uncertain. The U.S., nearly energy independent, still feels the shock. Gas prices have jumped over 50%, inflation is surging, and businesses face higher costs. The Federal Reserve is caught between inflation and recession risks. Defense spending is up as the U.S. Navy patrols the Gulf. Supply chains are disrupted, and strategic reserves offer only a temporary fix. Energy independence doesn't mean invulnerability. The aftershocks are hitting every corner of America. Europe's pivot from Russian gas to Gulf energy has backfired. With Hormuz closed, factories are rationing fuel, and energy-intensive industries are scaling back. Inflation is spiking, and governments scramble for costly alternatives. Climate goals are sidelined for survival, and protests over energy prices are spreading. EU unity is strained as social unrest grows. Even the wealthiest economies are at the mercy of geography. Hormuz has exposed Europe's Achilles heel. Pakistan, already struggling, now faces a perfect storm. Over 80% of its energy imports are disrupted, doubling fuel prices and triggering blackouts. Food and fertilizer costs are soaring, threatening agriculture and food security. Foreign reserves are vanishing, the risk of default is rising, and the currency is collapsing. Political tensions are escalating as the government seeks emergency loans. For Pakistan, this is an existential crisis. The nation's resilience is being tested like never before. South Korea's manufacturing engine runs on imported energy, mostly via Hormuz. With shipments blocked, costs for refiners and factories are soaring. Electricity prices spike, production slows, and unemployment ticks up. Ports are congested, exporters are losing contracts, and recession looms. Emergency supplies are hard to secure, and reserves won't last. Even the most advanced supply chains are vulnerable. No nation is immune. Japan, reliant on Middle Eastern oil, is running on empty. Fuel shortages and record prices are triggering blackouts and rising living costs. Manufacturers face higher costs and production cuts, risking stagflation. Government subsidies and rationing offer only temporary relief. Strategic reserves are limited, and alternatives are costly. Japan's vulnerability is stark. Energy routes can be weaponized. The stakes have never been higher. India imports over 80% of its oil, mostly through Hormuz. Fuel and food prices are soaring, power outages are spreading, and supply chains are faltering. The government scrambles for alternatives, but demand is overwhelming. Small businesses are closing, unemployment is rising, and rural areas are hit hardest. Protests erupt as political pressure mounts. Emergency measures buy time, but adaptation is critical. The next few months will decide India's fate. China, the world's top oil importer, is in crisis as Hormuz closes. Factories, logistics, and tech sectors are squeezed by soaring costs and supply shortages. Alternative sources are maxed out, and strategic reserves are finite. Production slows, unemployment rises, and energy rationing begins. Public frustration grows as living costs surge. China's leaders race for new deals, but competition is fierce. The world is watching China's response to the century's biggest energy shock. The closure of Hormuz is a global economic shockwave. From Iraq's oil fields to China's factories, nations are shaken to their core. No one is truly insulated. Geography still controls power. One narrow strait now controls the world. The fragility beneath modern prosperity is exposed. Governments, businesses, and families must rethink how they live and work. If this crisis continues, the global balance could change forever. The world is holding its breath.